In a quiz competition, a student answered n questions correctly and was given n, so bracket open, n plus 50 bracket close for each question correctly answered. If he gets 600 naira altogether, how many questions did he answer correctly? So now, there are some few things I'll point out in this lesson that you need to take um, note of. Like in any word problem question, you need to read that question at least 3 times. You need to read the question 3 times in order to understand the question. Don't rush the question. If you rush it, at the end of the day, you discover that the answer you got is wrong. So in any word problem question, read the question how many? At least 3 times to be able to point out some key important hidden details in that question. So in this question, we are going to read it again. In a quiz competition, a student answered n questions. That is, n question there means there is particular number of questions the student answered, but for now we don't know. So that is why we set a particular alphabet to stand for it for now. So the number of questions the student answered was n for now. So take note of that. These are the number of questions because we don't know the number of questions answered by the student. So we take note of that first. Then, and he was given what? That is, a student answered n questions correctly and was given n plus 50 for each question. That is, any question the student answer correctly is awarded n plus 50 naira for now, right? So this is the second thing you need to take note of. That is, for each and every question the student answered is awarded n plus 50, but the student answer, we don't know the number of questions, so we set it to be n. Answered certain number of questions, so it's n, right? You keep note of that, and if you take note of that, and again, if he gets 600 altogether, how many questions did he answer correctly? So the third part of the question that you need to take notice, all the money he got at the end of the competition was 600 naira, right? So now, how many questions was he able to answer that he got 600 naira? That is what you should ask yourself before you should go into answering the question. So you don't have to rush it. So let's solve the question together now. After explaining each and every 10 in the question, let's solve the question together. So now, in a competition, the student answer n question. So let's say total number of questions answered equal to what? N. But for each question, so now the total number of questions answered is what? N. Then um per question, that is each question, the reward equal to what? N plus 50. Then total reward is equal to 600. So now, how are we going to solve? So let's understand this question. If if um if one question is equal to n plus 50 naira, then n question will be equal to what? That is, if per question they are paying him this, right? So if he answers certain number of questions, what is it going to earn? That is what you ask yourself. So from here, you do what? You do what is called cross multiplication. So that will give you that. That will show that for certain number of for n questions, what you get or will gain what? N times what? N bracket open 50 bracket close. That is when you cross this multiply, that's what you're going to have. So for n questions, this is what you're going to get. That is, we are going to multiply the number of questions answered correctly times each times one of what? Reward for one question. That is what you have for total. So, but at the end of the day, he made, that is, the money he made uh 600 naira is equal to the total number of questions that is the money he made at the end of the day. When you multiply it by the number of questions, this is what you have. What he made 600 naira for all the questions, total number of questions he answered correctly. So now 600 is equal to n times n, that gives you n square. N times 50, that will give you what? 50n. This resulted to quadratic equation. So we are going to arrange it in that form. This is the format for quadratic equation. So we are going to do the same thing. We arrange the one of the highest power followed by the second power, like that. So in arranging this, in rearranging, rearrange, we have that n square plus 50n minus 600, that will give us what? 0. Or in other words, you can just say subtract 600 from both sides. In other words, you can just say subtract 600 from both sides of the equation. But this is what will now form the equation. So let's continue here. Let's continue here. So now we have n square plus 50n minus 600 is equal to 0. So now in quadratic equation, you think of two possible numbers that when you add, you have the middle term, and when you multiply, you have the last term. That is in factorization. But in completing square method, there is no need for that. Then in formula method, there is no need for that. But factorizing, we can factorize this equation here. So let's think of two possible numbers that when you add it together, you are going to have the middle term, and when you multiply, you're going to have the last term. So the two possible numbers here is 60 minus 50. That is, when you say 60 minus 10 will give us 50, right? That will give us that is plus 60 minus 10 will give us what? 50. That's that, and the middle term. So the last 10, 60 times 10 will give us 600. So we're right. So now n square plus 60 minus 60n minus 10n minus 600 is equal to 0. So you insert your brackets in order to find the highest common factor. The first bracket said the highest common factor is n. So n into n square will give us n, plus into 60 will give us 60. 60n will give us 60. So here the highest common factor here is 10, right? So here will remain n, and here will remain what? Plus what? Plus 60, because 600 divided by 10 is 60. So now let's have this big equation bracket outside of them. So now you notice that the two brackets are the same inside. So now, since the two brackets are the same, we decide to bring one out. So n plus 60 out. Then what is remaining inside of this bracket now is n minus 10, right? So now either the first bracket, either sorry, the first bracket, which is n plus 60, is equal to 0, or n minus 10 is equal to 0. So from here, n now will be equal to what? To minus 60, or n is equal to 10. But we cannot have um, negative money, which means, or negative questions, which means n is equal to 10. So that will give us the answer. Please turn on the notification bell and subscribe to my channel as we grow together. Thank you.